As you've read in the ground school material, the procedures we'll follow today are similar to real-world airline flying, but I've simplified them a lot for the purpose of teaching you the basics of flying jets. Let's hop to it and get the airplane ready for takeoff. We'll begin by running through an abbreviated checklist. Set takeoff flaps to 5 by pressing F7 3 times. Set auto brakes to RTO. No, I mean the jet's auto brakes, not the brakes in your car. Turn the landing light on by clicking the landing light switch. Okay, you would have got that one without me. Okay, I think we're ready for takeoff. But first, you have to remove your hands from over your eyes. Yes, that's better. Before we pour on the coals, let's quickly run through the takeoff procedure. You're going to move the throttles forward and increase the power to 40% N1 with the brakes set. Then, you'll release the brakes, set takeoff power to 95% N1, cross-check that both of your airspeed indicators are alive and engine gauges are in the green at 80 knots. Look for V1 at 150 knots. Rotate at 154 knots. Pitch up at 3 degrees per second until you reach 20 degrees nose-up attitude. Look for V2 at 162 knots. Check for positive rate of climb, then raise the landing gear. That's a lot to do in a short amount of time. This is one reason we have co-pilots. Wanting a cup of coffee is another reason we have co-pilots too. At about 1,000 feet above ground level, we'll start retracting the flaps. Set climb power for 90% N1 and lower the nose to 15 degrees nose-up pitch. You'll maintain 200 knots until 3,000 feet above ground level and then lower the nose to about 10 degrees nose-up pitch. After you reach 200 knots, retract the flaps completely, accelerate to 250 knots, and set auto brakes to off. You'll then be in a stable climb at 250 knots. Got all that? Don't worry, I'll be your co-pilot and help you along the way. But you'll have to get your own coffee. Things are going to happen fast between now and getting into a stabilized climb. If you get behind too much, feel free to press escape and restart the lesson. This is the electronic version of putting your hands back over your eyes. Here we go. You're clear for takeoff, so fly straight out, climb and maintain 12,000 feet. Advance the throttles to 40% N1. It takes very little throttle to hit 40%. Release the brakes and track the runway centerline. Now set power for 95% N1. There's 80 knots. Cross-check your 2 airspeed indicators and engine gauges. There's 150. Now 154. Rotate. Slowly bring the nose up to 20 degrees pitch up attitude. Good. You've accelerated through 162, which is V2. You have a positive rate of climb, so press G to raise the gear. Continue climbing. We're at 1,000 feet AGL, so press F6 twice to retract flaps to 1. Now set climb power to 90% N1 and change your nose-up pitch angle to 15 degrees. Now maintain 200 knots by adjusting your pitch. You've just passed through 3,000 feet, so lower your nose to 10 degrees nose-up pitch. It's time to retract the flaps completely. Press F6 once more. With your gear up, it's time to set auto brakes to off. Adjust your pitch to maintain 250 knots in a stable climb to 10,000 feet. Things are a little less frantic now. Use your trim to keep everything stable. Leveling off at 12,000 feet means we will start our preparation around 10,000 feet. You'll continue to decrease your pitch and accelerate to cruise speed. Then we'll practice some turns. Okay, there's 10,000 feet. Decrease your pitch to 6 degrees nose-up pitch, accelerate to 280 knots, and leave the power at 90% N1. Also, switch your landing light off now. With 1,000 feet to go, lower the nose to get 1,500 feet per minute on the VSR. Speed up. Coming up within 150 feet of 12,000 feet, so decrease your pitch to about 2 degrees and reduce your power to about 55% N1. There's 12,000 feet. Level off and trim for level flight. Continue on this heading until we get over Payne Field. Now it's time to try some turns. The airplane is going to handle a little differently than the 172. In fact, it should handle like 172, 172s. Let's try a turn to the left. Turn left 50 degrees to a heading of 290. Note how the controls are heavier than you experienced in other lessons. And you have to be more diligent with the pitch to maintain altitude. Pitch control is really important. Movement of the VSI needle provides a good clue to help you hold altitude. Start a smooth, continuous rollout now. You're handling the airplane well. We'll do another turn in a moment. Let's try a turn to the right to a heading of 360 degrees. Let's use 30 degrees of bank. Start your rollout now. You're too high. Descend. All right, let's try another turn to the right. We'll turn to a heading of 090 degrees. As soon as you roll out, reduce power, maintain your altitude, and slow to 250 knots. I'll let you do that all on your own without my prompting. You're too low. Climb. You're too low. Climb. I've really been working you hard, so how about letting me fly for a minute? I'll get us positioned so you can fly the descent, approach, and landing back at SeaTac. Okay, it's time for the descent. You have the airplane. Time to start down. Set your power to about 35% and 1. Speed control is the name of the game. We'll fly a relatively slow descent. Stabilize your descent at 200 knots and 1,500 feet per minute. Remember your instrument training because I want you to track the VOR. We'll switch to the ILS when we get closer. Let me help illuminate your approach. At 10,000 feet, it's standard procedure to turn on our landing light. As you start approaching 5,000 feet, begin to slow your rate of descent. Now that we're at 5,000 feet, slow to 180 knots and adjust your power to about 55% N1 to maintain that speed. While you're at it, lower the flaps to 5 by pressing F7 3 times. Keep your speed at 180 and stay level at 5,000 feet. Maintain 180 knots for now. We're getting a reading on the glide slope from the ILS. So let's transition from tracking the VOR to tracking the localizer, but adjust your power to establish a smooth descent on the glide slope. Okay, work on keeping the aircraft on glide slope at the proper airspeed and lined up with the runway. Time to lower the flaps to 15. Press F7 twice. Allow the aircraft to slow to 160 knots. This is probably a good time to configure the aircraft for landing. Let's arm the spoilers and set auto brakes to 3. And just because I took the controls a while back doesn't make me a spoiler either. Now let's press the G key to lower the gear. Maintain 150 knots, which is our final approach speed today. Adjust pitch and power as needed to maintain your glide path and airspeed. You might need a power setting of about 45% N1. One more flap setting to make. Set flaps to 30 by pressing F7 twice. You probably need about 55% N1 to maintain 150 knots on glide slope with your flaps and gear down. You're looking good, and so is the airplane. Okay, work on keeping the aircraft on glide slope at the proper airspeed and lined up with the runway. As we cross the threshold here, smoothly reduce power to idle. You're too low. Increase power. You're too low. Increase power. Now flare to a 3-degree nose-up pitch. Activate those thrust reversers by pressing and holding the F2 key. Notice how the auto brakes are slowing us down too. Press F1 to bring the engines back to idle, and we'll let the auto braking bring us to a stop. There you have it. It was a lot of work, but you are now checked out on the basics of flying the 737. The next lesson will help you fly the aircraft with more precision.